Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday night coffee talk. Tonight we'll be featuring the Mocha Pot, and I see the chat is going, so let's just say hello to everyone. Hi, Shauna. Thanks for parking in 40 minutes early. You are definitely first. Congratulations on beating Heath. And then we have Hoofing It and Hungry Heath. Visual Keto, who says they're excited for the Mocha Pot. I'm glad. I'm excited too. And then, of course, we have Hoofing It, which I already said. And Mary T. Hi, Mary. Nice to see you. And Rhonda. And the Warden. Sharon. So, and Sharon also has 2KK. Yeah, they did their BBBE premiere overlapping. Oops. Sometimes those calorie things are unavoidable. So I have kind of a lot to go over this evening, so I'm not sure quite how it's going to work out, but we'll wing it. I actually have this special Mocha Pot for tonight. I don't know if it'll work out because of the green screen on the video, but it's clear. And I would say I wouldn't run out and buy one of these because it feels kind of chintzy, but it was so novel that I thought it was just the right thing for tonight. So, let's see. Oh, and Heath is asking if the logo on my countdown screen is actually on our window, and it isn't, but now I feel like it would be fun to get that. I do have friends who have the cutters, the laser cutters for the vinyl. We could put that on the house. I'm sure that would go over well. Oh, and James has joined us. Nice to see you, James. Anyway, so the Mocha Pot. Before I do anything too elaborate with it, I'm going to actually grind my coffee tonight. I always put it off and do it beforehand because I'm lazy and I use my electric grinder, but it's too loud for on the live. But I broke out the hand grinder. This is a little Harrow ceramic. Even though it's plastic, it says ceramic because it's the internal parts, and it had a bean fall out of it. So if you're not familiar with a hand grinder, I'll go over the parts. It's the grounds wind up here in the chamber. This is the top where the actual grinding gears are. And the way you adjust the hand grinders for your grind size is the underneath of hand grinders usually have this, and you just you hold the internal and you can click it, and it adjusts whether that's tighter or smaller. And some of them go all the way down to espresso, and some of them do not. So this one doesn't quite get espresso fine, but for the Mocha Pot, you're not going for espresso grind. It's real easy. Screws on. And then it has a lid and the handle, which I'll show you in a minute. For Mocha Pots, I've got your standard size Mocha Pot. It's a 4-shot cup. And so I've got 22 grams of well, actually, I think I went a little heavier and went with 24 grams of coffee. When you start using your Mocha Pot, if you've got just one of the 1 or 2 person version, the 4 to 6 cup, you'll want 22 to 26 grams of beans, and you'll adjust that according to your preference. So you just pop on the and the handle screw pops right on. It just clicks in place, and it takes a second. It's a little tough to grind through them, but takes a little bit of hand strength. I'm not sure that it's quieter than my electric grinder after all, but we're going for it because I didn't bring pre-ground down. But it doesn't take long. And while I'm doing this, let's see what we've got. Oh, Rhonda says it looks nice, which it does. I've never actually brewed in this. It's been just like looking awesome. So, boy, it's taken me a bit. I might have to cheat. Give me a minute here to grind away. Shauna's asking how big the vinyl would have to be. That's actually a pretty sizable window. I seem to be struggling with my grinder. So I'm going to unscrew it and give it a little tap down here. And give it another loose click. James says his dog is named Moka, which I saw a picture, and that was one cute dog. There we go. And then Lisa says they bought a Mocha Pot and haven't used it yet. So now you'll be able to. And one of the things we'll say about this, boy, this grinding's taking me forever. So, I know you can't really see it. It is grinding. But maybe I should have not done it on the live. But we're going for it, and we'll get it done. May just take me a few minutes. In the meantime, I can tell you, yeah, so this is why we like the electric grinder better. But hey, it's getting my arms a workout, you know. So Lisa is finishing up dinner according to James, so that'll be nice. And I see Gigi's here. Hey, good evening. For a minute, I almost read good morning, and I was like, oh, are you? I don't know what I'm thinking. You know what? It's Sunday night. It's been a long week with the holiday and everything, so. All right. This for the birds, guys. I know I should hand grind it, but you're going to have to hang tight with me for just 1 second. I'm going to grind some coffee because I am lazy and it's just too much. 1 second. Sorry for that, but yeah, we can only take so much, right? Anyways, so much for my careful measuring. I apologize for the loud noise, but on the other hand, it wasn't that bad. And now we can show you the parts of the Mocha Pot and get ready to brew. So the Mocha Pot is comprised of several parts. You have your bottom chamber, and the bottom chamber has a release valve, and this is necessary because of the way it builds pressure and has to release pressure as we go along. Then it has your cup basket, which has 1/2 of the filter, and your grounds actually go in here. And then it has your upper part, which is comprised of the second layer of the filter, and it also has a sealing gasket. So, oh, and then Shauna says it's not like any of us don't know what the electric grinder sounds like. You know what? Honestly, I just was like, I almost did it too. I almost had it ground, and I'm like, nope, it's too long. I need coffee. And then it has a silicone sealing basket. So then is the upper chamber, where the tube where the brew comes up through is. It's a permanent attachment, and it doesn't come out, but it does rinse out when you're trying to clean it, and we'll talk about cleaning a little bit later. And then of course it has a lid. In order to brew, you always put hot water in here, and in this case I've got my hot water that I've already boiled up in my kettle. Boy, I couldn't remember how to say kettle. And basically, wow, it's really cheap. So you pour it up, and when you put your water in here, you pour it to just under the edge of the valve. You don't want to put over the valve, or else it cannot release the proper amount of pressure, or it cannot push the water up appropriately. The next thing you do is you're going to put the coffee into your pot, into your little cup here. And one of the big mistakes I often see people do is they use espresso grind in there. And I've done that before myself, because sometimes it's just what it is, and it's not a good brew. But the other thing I see people do is really pack the coffee in. And this is you use a loose grind, not quite as loose as you would for say a drip or a pour over, but definitely not as loose as your espresso grind. I am getting coffee everywhere, and that's okay, because this is a tablecloth that gets washed pretty easy. At any rate, you just get your grounds in there, and you're not going to pack it down. I'm going to set my cup here for a second and get the rest of the grinds. There you go. Oops. Of course. The other thing is, when you put your grinds in here, you're not looking to pack it down, but you do need to level it off, and you just do that real loose, and you put your extra back in, and there you go. You give it a little wipe. You don't want stuff on the edge, and you just place it right into the chamber with the hot water. Careful, because the pot is hot. Let me just tidy up here for a second. And you did just hear me mention that it is hot. So, goodness. That means it's going to be problematic to touch it. Clear some grinds off here. But that's why you always keep a towel handy, because the next step is to place your chamber on top of it and screw it on. You want to make sure that you keep your chamber nice and even, because if you put it on crooked, it's not going to seal properly and then brew appropriately. So let's take a minute and do some comments before we get it going. Let's see. Rhonda mentions that she uses hers every day. Shauna mentions that she's sometimes grinding coffee at midnight. Oh, and Warden was fixing their plate of leftovers. That's the best part about holidays, is having good leftovers. At least for me it is. We have prime rib in the fridge that should last us at least a couple more days. So, oh, and we see we've got Barely Begun has joined us. Said sometimes they need sometimes we need a cup of coffee to be able to manage to make a cup of coffee. You are so right. There's a comedian with a bit about having a Dunkin' Donuts coffee to stand in line at Starbucks. Except for I can't drink Dunkin' Donuts coffee. That stuff is so foul. But hey, if that's your jam, by all means. But that's a pretty funny joke. It's kind of true sometimes. That's why we have a drip maker. It doesn't make the greatest cup of coffee, but it makes coffee. And we set it up the night before, so when you get up in the morning, you can smell coffee in the house, and you have a nice warm cup. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and light my little camp stove here. And as you see right now, the flames are super high. You turn that way down, because you never want the heat to be too high on your Mocha pot. You're not trying to boil it. You set it on there. And as you'll notice, I did not put the lid on. That's another mistake that a lot of people make, is you always keep your lid open. If it's on a hinge like this one, you keep your hinge open, and we'll show you, really the lid is only there to make it easier pouring or nicer pouring. And Shauna mentions that her leftovers were the pork rind stuffing with bacon and eggs for lunch. I saw the recipe for that pork rind stuffing, and I gotta say, I'm gonna have to try that, because it did look really good. So let me just get some stuff out of the way here. I threw coffee grounds everywhere, guys. I have to sweep and mop down here. So anyways, the Mocha Pot. We'll keep an eye on it here, because now what's going to happen is as it continues to heat up, it's going to build pressure, and it will push up through this tube in the middle, and like a little bit of foam will come out, and then the coffee will start brewing. So again, like I said, you want a more of a between fine and medium grinds. Kind of like, again, I'm back to that whole sort of like granulated. Here it comes, guys. Oh, exciting. So now what I'm going to do is turn down the heat, because it's getting too wild for me. So I'm going to turn it down a little bit. You need it to continue brewing, but you need to turn it down. So, because if it gets too wild, it's going to channel, and I'll explain what that is in a few moments. But we can see the coffee coming out. It's coming up the tube just like it's supposed to. Groovy. I wish that you could see better on the camera, but it's pretty good anyways, and because it's kind of neat watching it come through. And I'm just going to keep adjusting the heat. As you see, it's coming out. It's ready to come off the heat, actually. As you can see, it's kind of flowing aggressively. And I'll just keep it a while. If it slows down too much, you put it back on. There's kind of some back and forth with it. That's one of the things. So I'm going to keep my flame going. That way, if I need to shove it back over like I just do now, we'll just put it back on. It'll heat back up. You take it off. It's just about done. And on this one, the lip is a little higher up, so it won't feel quite as high. On a regular Mocha Pot, you'll see that the lid comes down, the pour spout comes down a little further. When your pot brews, it should come just to the very start of that spout, and that's when it's all the way done. So that was really groovy for me, and I think it kind of makes me think of Susan, who I haven't seen yet tonight. Maybe she can't make it tonight, but now you put it on here, put your lid on, because it's done brewing. Okay, that's a little, I'm not loving that part on the glass, but that is it for the Mocha Pot brew. So it is a super strong, you can see it's not translucent, it's almost thick looking. And that is because the brew in here, sometimes they call it espresso, or they call it a cup of coffee, all kinds of things, and really the answer is that it's espresso-like. It's not actually an espresso, which is why you don't get that thick foamy crema. The Mocha Pot, while I did say I was pressure, it's more similar to a percolator, and the kind of pressure you get in a percolator versus the pressure you get in an espresso machine. And by that I mean that pressure is measured in bars, and in the Mocha Pot you're only going to get 1 to 3 bars, whereas an actual espresso, in order to get that brew, is at least a minimum of 9 bars and often 15 to 16 bars. So since the Mocha Pot coffee is so concentrated, tonight I've brought down my electronic frother. This is an Arancino by Nespresso, and it has an extra part in it today. It actually, on the inside, it's just your non-stick chamber, and then it has a magnet device with a little frothing spring. There's a little knob in there. There it is. And it just plunks right down on there. I brought myself down some heavy cream that I thinned with a little bit of unsweetened almond milk, because I found that this frother doesn't work quite as good if you don't get all the way to the top of the spring. But that actually will be just fine for me for pouring. You put the lid on and you put it on the electric, and I just push the button and you see it lights up red. Well, maybe you don't see. It lights up red. If I keep pushing, if I keep tapping it, it can also go over to cold, but I want warm coffee because it's freezing tonight. So okay, so yeah, Hoofing It and Visual Keto all say that it is. It showed up great on the screen, so you guys could see it. So that was pretty cool. I'm really pleased with that visual. Jerry's sharing with us his cruise plans, which I am certainly envious of. Leaving first thing in the morning. The flight's at 8:15. So. And Shauna mentions that she agrees that it is very similar to the percolator that her grandpa had, the aluminum ones that they were forbidden to wash. Oh, we'll talk about that in a minute too. So, and Mary T says it is wishing JV Dub some safe travels, which of course all of us agree we want that. And my froth is already done. So I'm going to show you a little something here. I am going to pour my Mocha Pot right off in here. That's too much coffee. All right. I do want to sleep tonight. But you can see it's nice and rich. I need to take the lid off of this for pouring. One thing about the Arancino is that for me, it somewhat gets a little bit too foamy because it gets a lot of foam. And while I can't do art, I keep saying I'm going to practice. Hi, Lisa has joined us and says she just finished cooking dinner. Tell us about what you made, Lisa. Your stuff is always so amazing. So when you pour, though, you don't want to just thunk it all in there. Tilt your cup. You see how it's already almost all to the edge? Bring your Arancino or your pour, if it's a foam, and bring it right to the middle. And just gently start pouring it from the spout. And that'll sink in, or you can spill it on there. And that will just slowly mix it in. You'll bring it all the way up. And then you just slowly start tilting it and bringing it to the edge. In theory, this is how those lovely baristas make fun things like hearts and stuff. But I usually just make what's known as a mess. And that's fine and dandy with me. So here's my foam. And it's all good. I did not bring myself anything fancy or fun to sprinkle on top. Important. Enjoy all the foam when you can. And there is my nice little cappuccino. Good to go. So, but I will tell you, oh no, the Mocha, I would take an AeroPress over the Mocha Pot any day. I do love my Mocha Pot, but one more thing, we'll talk about it before we get into the nitty-gritty of the Mocha Pot. You guys, this was my treat for tonight. As you know, on Sunday nights, I always make myself a treat. I've shared this a little bit on the Keto Village and in our old Keto Palooza chat. But this is that PSMF bread. I'm making shadows. Boy, it reflects. Anyways, I made them in a hamburger bun silicone mesh mold. And it is so awesome. I'm gonna break it open. I don't know because I'm too blinded by the lights, but it is so soft and fluffy. And then I didn't sweeten the actual bread part very much because it's a lot for me, and I forgot. But it really is like super soft and fluffy. And then on the top, I made like a light buttercream with a little bit of butter and cream cheese and heavy cream, and I whipped it all together with some sweetener, and then I just powdered some cinnamon on top, because a nice cappuccino or a heavy espresso goes great with pastry. But as you know, we don't eat a ton of pastry, so there you go. I really lucked out. It came out good. I was thinking that with the glass pot it might not be as delicious, but it's pretty good. It's not as strong. But that's probably for the best since it's also Sunday night. So let me catch up with some comments and then we'll move on to some more discussion. So, JV Dub mentions that they finally got everything packed, but they still need to do like the last minute charging cables, which we always do at the last minute as well. And Air Fry and Auntie has mentioned that's how they think coffee should look. Probably tired of all my black coffees. So, let's see. Everybody's saying hello. Warden mentions they're going to have a cup after the live. I think you should send Heath to just go make you a cup right now. And then he can catch up on, and join in on the conversation again. So... Oh, and JV Dub mentions that he posted on the 2KK group about the special for the AirPress that we talked about last week for $18.50. So if you're interested in that, it is a good deal. That is a phenomenal price. So Mary T mentions that they like making the PSMF cinnamon buns. I agree. I'm super excited by them. Then Air Frying Auntie says that if they get an AeroPress, they may have to get a hot pot that has a temperature gauge. Probably. I will be honest. It does make it even better. But because the temperature does make a difference. But if you're used to just regular coffee, it's probably not the worst scenario. Keep an eye on it, and you'll know, because it gets to that right just before it's going to boil, but not quite, and you pull it off, and you'll be fine. You can also just use a thermometer to keep track of it. Oh, and Shauna says no, it looked good before the froth cream too. Heath says he's eating, that's why he can't go make coffee. Excuses. That's all I'm saying. Oh, hi, Blue Dove. Oh, Blue Dove's having net issues today, so watching on her phone. I was a little bit worried because our internet went out not too long before the live, and we have Spectrum, and they are not the most reliable. But they seem to get it all rebooted. So, Visual Keto has shared that they tried the egg coffee in the blender today and was surprised that they didn't mind it, since they usually like all the coffee frills, which, yeah, I've been there too. I was really hesitant, but I like the Vietnamese coffee with the condensed milk and the egg, so it wasn't hard to push me over into the butter and egg, and then eventually just the egg. So, but it might be easier for someone like me who's a black coffee drinker like 98% of the time. And Shauna mentions that they have a Breve electric pot. Honestly, that's pretty cool. So, okay, nerd stuff with the Mocha Pot. You should know that the Mocha Pot is very divisive. It's a hot topic. If you talk to like coffee nerds and geeks and enthusiasts and experts, they will argue up and down, left and right about the Mocha Pot. And the reason that is because it is so particular. All right. I put too much cream in there. I'm just going to add some more in here. Give me just a second. There we go. Now I've narrowed down the foam and killed some of it. That's better for me. So, anyways, it's a really divisive topic because it's often called an espresso pot, even though it doesn't actually make espresso. I mentioned it's espresso-like, and so they get really, really bent out of shape. But the other reason people get worked up about it is because it's incredibly picky. It is super easy to have your Mocha Pot coffee go wrong. I was actually prepared for that with the glass one, but it's fine. But even someone who uses it frequently all the time, it's so easy to just accidentally overdo it, and suddenly you got yourself a rough cup of coffee. But it's good tonight, so I'm happy. It's a little weird with the cream in it, but that's not because it tastes weird. It's just not my usual. I really went all out for tonight. So anyways, because it's not actually espresso, people get kind of worked up. And the other thing, because it's easy to go rye, people have a lot of bad experiences with it. So there's a lot of discussion surrounding that, and you'll see lots of people, they'll talk back and forth about how to make it just so, how to, grind it finer, grind it coarser, grind it differently. Oh, you packed it too tight, you didn't pack it tight enough. Back and forth for aeons they will go. And the answer is find a way that works for you, and if you don't like it, it's okay. It was still an incredibly cheap brew pot, and it's great for travel, not the glass one, of course. And if you don't like it, you're not really out a whole bunch. So I will say that some very positive things about the Mocha Pot is its portability. Really cool nerd things about it is that as far as it being an espresso pot, I know it's not real espresso, but it was a really groundbreaking, revolutionary device. It was genius. And it was really the catalyst for bringing an espresso experience home. Before there was a Mocha Pot, espresso was exclusively for coffee shops. There was no way to make espresso at home before there was a Mocha Pot. And to give you an idea of the timeline on that, the Mocha Pot was not invented until 1933, and it was invented by, I'm going to say his name wrong, Luigi Di Ponte. And Luigi was an engineering genius, and so he came up with this device. And there's a lot of myths and stories as to what inspired his device, beyond just wanting to be able to bring that espresso experience home. But he teamed up with his friend, a name you all recognize when we start talking Mocha Pot, Alfonso Biolade. He was a metal machinist, and he helped bring the Mocha Pot into production. So they developed this Mocha Pot, brought it into production, and that really is where it started getting put out in public. Now, the Mocha Pot, I say he was a metal machinist. His specialty was aluminum, which is why so many of your Mocha Pots are aluminum. And that's another thing that people don't love. Most Mocha Pots are hand wash only. You cannot throw them into the dishwasher, the washing machine. The washing machine is actually one of the myths that were handed down as to inspiration for it. They talked about, I talked about it being related to a percolator, but one of the myths is that he was paying attention to his washing machine one day and was pondering how it, back in those days, it used to build up the pressure and push the hot water up through the tube. So, I don't know, that seems kind of far-fetched to me, but you never know. People are inspired by the weirdest things. So, let's see. I'll get back to some of the comments here before I continue blathering on. So, Barely Begun is asking if there are any tricks for judging the grind size. A lot of it is really paying attention and having a grinder that can. That's why we usually recommend burr grinders. Barely Begun, you're using a bullet to grind your coffee, so the answer is you probably wouldn't really get, you won't get a consistent grind size. Grind it less. So you'll have to pay attention to it because the bullets and blade grinders don't have a way to adjust your size. Burr grinders have things that allow you to adjust the size and define it. The one that I have has little dots all the way down to espresso grind that's not actually espresso grind because it's a cheap grinder, and then goes all the way up to big and chunky that I don't know what you would ever use for. So I would say kind of pay attention to it. Only put it for a couple seconds at a time so it doesn't warm up and start getting the oils and clogging it up. Give it a good tap and just push it down for a second and let it grind and grind for a second. Pull it, tap it, and keep playing with it until you see that most of it is like the consistency of a granulated erythritol. So let's see. I have to actually scroll back up because I've talked on so long. Nope, I'm good. So let's see. More hellos. Oh, and JV Dub mentions Happy Hanukkah to everyone who's celebrating Hanukkah. That's a good reminder. See, oh, and Air Frying Auntie is saying they might need to invest in some of the insulated mugs for their Christmas list. So, right, purchase for yourself. That's usually what my Christmas list means, even though we just, amongst our family, we've found that it's much better to just pool our funds and buy things that we want and need, and better to buy what you want for yourself than to try and do all the coordination for a gift exchange within our house. It's still hot, so I had to give it a second before I continued drinking because I didn't want to burn my mouth again. Blue Dove is saying that they're almost recovered from their travels, and they need to learn some techniques for how not to tense up on the long drives. That's really good to point out because I do that too when I'm driving long distances. I get really sore here, and also like I hold my arms, so even like my biceps and my forearms, like everywhere, it just gets sore all through. And I haven't really made the jump to really trust cruise control, as if it's like, I don't know what my problem is, because that's probably more reliable than my personal driving. But I don't use the cruise control either, so I definitely, get a lot of tension in my leg too. So let's see. Rhonda is passing on some hellos, and Heath mentions that one of the cabinet companies he worked for had a color called espresso, but the touch-up pens were marked expresso. Oops. Oh, yep. And Visual Ketos mentions that's why that explains why their father-in-law called it the Bialotti. Yes, the most popular brand of Mocha Pots now is called the Bialotti. And that is because in 1953, the company that he worked with to produce the Mocha Pots, that is when they created the logo. And if you ever look up pictures of Alfonso Bialotti, I can't even explain to you, but he is one mustachio inspirational man. His mustache is just glorious. I don't know how to explain it to you, but you've seen those mustaches, the great big gigantic Italian mustaches, you could twist the ends and the whole 9 yards. So that was him. And so when they created the logo, that's why it's the big mustache with the Bialotti on it. So it's all because he's the one who made it. Luigi may have designed it, but Bialotti, he brought it to life. So that is what you get. And they've continued putting it all together, the Bialotti. In addition to now, they no longer have just the standard Mocha Pots that are the aluminum. Now they make stainless steel, so you can use them on your induction burners. They've made ceramic. They make all kinds of shapes. Some of them are a bit nicer looking now, although I still really like the classic. I just stopped touching that because one thing I forgot to do, but I didn't really need to as much, just so you know, if it's brewing and it's going hard and it's shooting out, you almost always have to, in the one with the metal chamber on top as well, I even brought it down. You plunge it in some cold water to instantly stop that and release the pressure. It just turned out that I didn't need to with this one tonight. But that's actually kind of an important piece, so I don't want to leave you without that tip. Just as it pulls off the burner and is brewing through, you should put it under the cold water. Even if you just run the bottom underneath your faucet with cold water, but a bowl with some ice water is even better. Jerry just made the joke. He says, so was that the mustachino? And I have to say, I'm pretty sure that they probably made that joke because his mustache, I wish that I had the ability now to pull pictures and throw them up. I'm working on learning how to do that because, yes, it is that glorious. So, I was back to talking about some of the other things. So not only was this like a revolution in design that brought espresso home, and Bialotti was able to design it and such, across throughout the world, aluminum, not only was that a specialty of his, was actually going through a bit of a renaissance in kitchen design. So it was also really trendy, so it kind of just fit right into that genre. Everything was being made out of aluminum during that period. So it really just was kind of like a bit of a genius at that point in time. So while it is hard to get it used to it and hard to get the good Mocha Pot going, practice makes perfect, and then you get it tailored to yourself, and you can make a pretty good cup of coffee. Now I will tell you, usually in the Mocha Pot you're going to use Arabica beans, but if you really need a good dark heavier taste to it and you want some of that nuttiness or that little hint of chocolatiness, no one is going to give you like the dirty eyes for using a little bit of Robusto and mixing it. Normally we don't mix our beans that way, but in the Mocha Pot you can probably get even maybe all the way up to like 25% of your beans as a Robusto to kind of boost it up. The Mocha Pot is really the pot where you can play and do off the cuff things and get it to your liking, because half the time it's going to be bad anyway, so you may as well get it just so. And once you get it just so for you, never change. And then you will have a delightful cup every time. The other part about the Mocha Pot is it also feeds into my little grooviness that I keep talking about, as far as relaxing and enjoying, and because you can't just put your pot down and leave it. You actually have to focus and pay attention. So it gets you into that little headspace. It takes you away from all the hustle and bustle, and you just have to focus on your coffee. So it's the whole emotion surrounding the experiences of coffee brewing, the warmth surrounding having it going, the scents that are entering your olfactory system, which leads to the adrenaline cycle. So it's both a physiological and a psychological effect during there. So it's a perfect way to kind of just slow down and enjoy. So, so anyways, yeah, so Rhonda mentions that she actually never uses a dishwasher anyways, so hand washing is fine. Now, I will tell you, and Lisa says, oh man, their dishwasher's down and has been for a while, so they are hand washing all their dishes too. I'm not excited. I would probably go to a lot of disposable dishes if I had to hand wash them. But it is what it is. And then Air Frying Auntie mentions that when she ordered the regular mug, she didn't see the insulated ones. So, oh, that's too bad. And also, she mentions that emotion is also how she feels while crafting. I get that too, because sometimes working with the yarn, or especially with chainmail too, just getting into that little groove, it's great. So I mentioned that the Mocha Pot is finicky, and it's hard to get down to science with it. I'm going to take a bite of this. It's calling me. I've been waiting and waiting. It's so soft, you guys. I've eliminated the styrofoam effect. It's so perfect. I'm sorry, I'm going to have a moment here. It's so soft. I will post what I did with that, but I'll also talk through it in a minute. So let's see. And Blue Dove is asking if I have any input on coffee that's easy on the urinary system. They typically use an Arabica light roast flavored with chocolate and coconut. And depends on what you mean by easy on the urinary system. I will say all coffee, regardless of how it's roasted, is a diuretic. So it's going to make you work. It's going to make your urinary system work. You do need to hydrate with it, which is why we always have water. I always say it's because we need to cleanse your palate as you go along to enjoy your coffee. But it's also because the coffee has a diuretic effect. So you do need to continue your hydration. Speaking of which, now that you mention it, I am thirsty. So anyways. Oh. And Shauna is making fun of whether we, those who have to hand wash, whether that's a broken dishwasher or not. And I'm just going to say, it's easy to hand wash dishes, but it just doesn't appeal to me. So I am a dishwasher fan. I've even tried to get into it just a little bit because I've had a lot of experience with a mindful sort of Zen kind of living where they tell you to take pleasure in all of your activities. And one of the things they describe is like relaxing and watching the dish suds and all of that. And I was like, okay, there is such a thing as going too far. It does not always work for you. And Blue Dove says that it does seem to, that the coffee does seem to irritate her bladder. And yeah, I do know there's a couple lower acid coffees. I don't know the names of them off the top of my head, but I'll look them up and I'll post them for you. It'll probably be Tuesday because I've got like this big ordeal tomorrow. It just escapes me, and I know it. And if I can't find it right away in my papers, but I know my friend from Cincinnati absolutely knows. If he doesn't carry them, he knows he can acquire them as well. So I'll get that information. But honestly, if it is irritating your bladder, it just may be simply too much diuretic for you. In which case, we'll have to talk more about some tea. So, now back to the tough parts about the Mocha Pot and all the things that can go wrong with it. So, we'll just take this one. Improper assembly. So I told you, we're holding it with a towel and you're screwing this on. It is a screw top, so it can go off track. And if it goes off track, as it tries to pressurize, it may not fully pressurize and it can leak out the middle and then it'll never brew appropriately. So that's number one. And then it's a pain in the backside because, it's hot because you fill it with hot water and you have to use the towel. And by the time you realize it's not assembled properly, you've got it on the stove, so stuff is spewing over onto your stovetop. And so that is part of the good, the bad, the ugly of the Mocha Pot. Now, if you find that your safety valve is shooting out or spitting or creating steam, either you put too much water. I mentioned, and I think it's too, I don't know, I can't really get the good angle in there. Yeah, it's sort of, maybe, kind of. The valve's in here, you fill it to just under the valve. If you fill over the valve, sometimes it'll spit like that, and it also will not brew properly. Or it could be clogged. If it's clogged, that's a big pain as well because you can't disassemble the valve. Now you do have to take it all apart and empty it out and give it a good cleaning. You do need to clean your Mocha Pots. This is not a new Mocha Pot. You keep it clean. Earlier someone mentioned that they weren't allowed to clean the percolators. Oh, it's the same thing. People say, oh, it has to season. That's where you get the flavor. No, 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 no. That is nasty. Clean your pots. They should be clean all the time. If it's not clean, you're just getting old, nasty coffee buildup. You're not getting seasoning and flavor. Clean it. But by clean it, I mean, right after the live stream, I'm going upstairs. I'm giving this a good rinse and washing it all out and making sure there's no coffee grounds in it. Don't use soap in there. Soap will deteriorate it. So it's not the end of the world. But so I make a big fuss, clean it, but also don't be crazy about it. So no soap, just a good hot rinse and making sure you get all the grinds and stuff out of it. It should always look nice and clean like that. If it doesn't, it's probably time to replace some parts. Now, if you have, it wasn't that and it's still spitty, the other thing that could have happened is you pack the grounds too tight. You don't tamp it, and it's tempting because they say it's espresso, and if you haven't been told, because they don't come with instructions or anything, and you like use that espresso tamper and you squish it down in there, the water is not going to be able to get back up in there properly, and it might back down and go out your safety valve. That's why it's a safety valve, to release the pressure. Good news is it's not big enough and it doesn't have enough pressure to like explode, just to be very messy. Time for a sip. Lots of back and forth about the dishwasher, and Lisa and James actually have a dishwasher, it just needs installed. That's a pain in the ass, and we installed ours, but it's not too bad as long as you have all of the parts and you don't have to drill holes to bring it around behind cabinets. Yeah. So, let's see. And then the warden is asking about, what about the ashwagandha for coffee alternatives? You know, I don't know a whole lot about that. I would actually have to ask my friend some questions on it. I have heard of it, but I don't know where it lies on the acidity center of the fence. So that's something to research. And now you put it in my head to research it. We might have to deep dive on it. We'll think about it for later in the winter. So let's see. And both Rhonda and Barely Begun are talking about the dishes and how, being only one person, that the dishwasher is really more inconvenient and wasteful than hand washing, which certainly makes a lot of sense. I know that there have been times when it's just me at home and everybody else is traveling for work or school and whatever, and yeah, at that point it usually is easier to hand wash the dishes because there's just one person, and it's just wasteful to use the dishwasher. So, let's see. Oh, and then Air Frying Auntie mentions that Grandpa is long past, but he might have liked the taste of burnt coffee. You know what? People get used to what they get used to, and then it's very hard to like something different. So, entirely possible. And then Visual Keto mentions that they used to use ice and salt to get coffee stains from the glass pots, but no soap. Right, just like your cast iron. And aluminum is not different. It's not vastly different. Because it's aluminum, though, instead of the ice and salt, you're actually going to use vinegar or lemon juice and water, just like when you're cleaning the copper, actually. And that'll get your coffee stains out of there and give it a good scrub. Salt if something goes vastly awry, but really, you should never actually need to do that. If you do, honestly, it's probably worth passing it off to the recycle for the metal aluminum recycling and just getting yourself a new one. I will say, though, that the stainless steel ones you can toss in the dishwasher. So, oh, and Blue Dove says their ground beef is done. The Instant Pot just beeped. I love the convenience of the Instant Pot for ground meats when it's just stuff, because a lot of times I just throw it in there and I just let it be plain, and then I take it out and set it in with a little bit of broth to keep it moist. That way I can make it multiple flavors and use it for a wide variety of stuff. That's great. So let's see, and Rhonda's asking, says sometimes when she uses her Mocha Pot, it leaks around the bottom when pouring. Is that because I don't have it tight enough? It's actually, when you say the bottom, you mean like around here? It's actually probably just not screwed on properly. So, yeah, and possibly not tight enough, 50-50. The other thing could be is that if you've been using it for a long time, the gasket might be ready for replacement. And they actually have the rubber gaskets or the silicone gaskets on Amazon. They're real cheap, so you can definitely replace those and get that taken care of. Let's see. If when it's brewing and you have the disaster where it overflows, instead of coming just to the bottom of here, suddenly your coffee foams up and overflows. It's a moment of panic, but that's usually user error. And I'm sad to say that honestly that's totally something. It's one of the reasons that the Mocha Pot is not always the best device for a Maitreya, and that is because I tend to get easily distracted. When I say it's an art that helps you zone out because you have to pay attention, I mean you have to pay attention, because if you don't, that's the kind of stuff that happens. It means that you had it on the heat way too high for way too long. So, and I'm having another bite. This thing is good, you guys. Let's see. I'm going to tell you about these buns because I strayed from the PSMF recipe. This is not a PSMF muffin. And it is so soft and fluffy. I took I used regular liquid egg whites because I still had cartons of it, and I used that. And then instead of just egg white powder adding in, I added in some egg white powder and then 2 tablespoons of the whole egg powder. I'm sorry, 2 teaspoons. And then 1 teaspoon of egg yolk powder. My spices, which was cinnamon, allspice, and cardamom. And a tablespoon of powdered butter. I can't remember if I added anything else. I know I was going to put cream of tartar when I whipped the egg whites, but I actually forgot. And they just sat on my counter unused. So that's probably why it deflated as much as it did, but the deflation actually seemed to be of benefit. And then I spooned the batter into, I have a bun pan that is silicone mesh, and I put that on a piece of parchment on a baking tray, and I baked it at 325 for 12 minutes. I really hope I can replicate this. Oh, and I also put a teaspoon of nutritional yeast in there. I am so jazzed by these. So I'm a happy camper this evening. Let's see. Oh, and Hungry Heath says he's about to load the IP with eggs because he normally eats about 4 hard-boiled eggs every day. You know, I was doing that for a long time as well. I would just boil all my eggs, and they were very handy, and I just sort of took like a little leap of a break away from them. I kind of feel like I've been a little out of control lately, which I know sounds weird since I'm eating a treat, but it's my Sunday night treat. Not with anything like crazy, just been eating a lot lately, and I don't. Some of it has just been winter, but even like my exercise has been a little off. I'm still doing exercise, but not as intense. So I don't know. I need to get back to it, but I don't know. My mood has been all wild, and I don't know where my motivation has gone, but I need to get back on it. And I feel like if I push myself, I probably would start enjoying it again. And I don't know. It's like I took like a vacation from my regular life for some reason. But also still doing good. No signs of like seizures or headaches or anything like that. I did get like a really bad bout of allergies right with the turn of the weather and the seasons. And I think that might have been part of it, because I had a miserable bike ride because I couldn't breathe. And I think it just kind of put me off for a little bit, and I needed to recover. So that's my accountability, is like Tuesday, when other people are Zwifting on Twitch, I'm going to come down and do my ride and start working my way back to my normal. Let's see. Oh, and Rhonda says has learned her lesson with overflow, and now sets a timer with Alexa. Yep. And Lisa S is asking if I spray the mesh. Yes, I have spritzers and that I have filled with avocado oil and one with avocado oil and one with olive oil. And today I spritzed my pan with avocado oil. So it was fantastic. I will tell you, it weirded me out at first, and I thought that the mesh was going to be horrendous to clean up, because the batter does go through the mesh a little bit. And so it's a little finicky when you unmold. You got to make sure you're careful. And then, but the bottom stays and looks kind of dirty on the outside of it. And I thought I was going to have to scrub really hard, but I gave it a light brushing with the dish brush, and then threw it right in the dishwasher, and it came clean. Much to my relief, because I was not going to be excited about hand scouring flexible, squishy mesh. So. And Rhonda says it sounds a lot like her cinnamon bun recipe, so I'm glad to hear that, because Rhonda has put out some amazing foods, and I am completely blown away. Even more so than I am about how lucky I got with my Mocha Pot tonight. And Rhonda also says that the mesh definitely needs to be sprayed. So that's good to know. I mean, I sprayed it just kind of thinking it seemed like a smart idea, and I have been too hesitant to try not to. So, let's see. Oh, and the parchment paper, she says the parchment paper is a good idea. I don't do anything without parchment underneath it now. It just seems to be really smart thinking when it comes to anything I'm putting in the oven. So, these might be dangerous. They're really good. As long as I don't go upstairs and like eat 3 more, it's fine. Sorry, you guys. I gotta have my coffee and my little bun. So, another thing that people mention a lot when they talk about Mocha Pots. And our friend Auntie is asking, says they stepped away for a moment and wants to know what mesh we're spraying with what. It's the silicone mesh hamburger bun pans from that. If you saw the egg bread video from Indigo, that one that she used for the deep buns, they have several kinds. So this is the thin hamburger bun, but the deep bun too that I got when I saw hers, they all need sprayed. I also bought a hot dog bun. I'm so excited to try that, but we ought to eat the prime rib before I start fooling around with hot dogs. I'm not letting prime rib go bad to eat a hot dog, that's for sure. So it was really good. I really love using it. And I'm hoping that they come up with more shapes of them, because it was so much fun. Anyways, so Mocha Pot things, back to it. So the other thing that I see people talking about is their pot getting burnt, either on the sides or getting yucky on the bottom. A lot of times the burn is not the end of the world. You'll get some discoloration over time. It's just what's going to happen. However, it shouldn't be burnt. And if you're getting burn spots, you're using too high of a heat. And if you're getting burns up on the side, when I mentioned previously, I'll just show you. It should never, for a second, it'll be fine. That hot flame, you see how it's flickering up around on the sides? Yeah, that's what's going to burn your pot. So don't do that. And people do that because they think they've got to continue bringing that water to a hard boil, but you don't need to do that. It's consistent heat, not high heat, that's going to build the pressure. So, but if you burn it, it's also not the end of the world. Again, there's only so much you can do with an acid and the salt and the vinegar, or the salt and the lemon juice to clean it up. But you definitely, better just use a lower heat. Now, if you get your Mocha Pot on there and you've put your grounds in there and you go and it gets hot and it's brewing and it's been sitting for a long time, way longer than usual, but nothing is happening and nothing brews, that's probably your filter getting clogged. So some things that can happen. You unscrew this. When I say your filter, I mean, yeah, there's one filter here. Also, this is probably, you just need to be giving this a good rinse and scooping your grounds out. This is what I mean by filter. And there are replacements for this as well. And again, they're not expensive. But especially if you have a harder water, they can get calcium buildup. And no amount, and so you got to make sure that when you are giving it your rinse right after, that you give it like a little scour with the brush. Just a nice non-scratchy sort of nylon brush that you use for your dishes to keep that buildup out of it. Now, if it ever does get clogged, you can disassemble it. You can take all the parts out, and then you can give it a good cleaning and reassemble it. Like I said, they sell replacements. I can't get my fingers in there right now to disassemble this one on the fly. So I have a little, I don't even know what it's called, but it's a little widgy thing that you stick in there to pluck it out. Oh, there we go. There you go. And there's your filter. So easy peasy. And you can clean it all right up, and it just pushes right back into place. There you go. So that can happen. And I can show you right here. The other thing that can happen is if that's not it, bad brews can happen. And I mentioned all of the other things that can happen that cause bad brews, but if you're getting like some watery or not so tasty brews, or just like it seems like not as much water is coming out as normal, starts getting lesser, you might find occasionally that these, because it's thin aluminum, it is bendy. I don't want to squeeze it too much. I keep squeezing it and I'm like, I'm gonna end up harming my own Mocha Pot. It's really soft, so it's prone to damage. And really, when you get the grounds out, just let it cool down before you do that. And honestly, just stick your finger in there and give it a little scoop and scoop the ground right out of there, or use a nice little soft spoon or something. It's just a little coffee grounds. It's actually good for your skin. Wash your hands. You can use soap on your hands, not on your Mocha Pot. But the reason you do that is, and it's something that I hear and see a lot of people do, is they take it because it makes a little coffee puck in there. Because as your grounds get moist, they swell up and tamp down. And so people take it and they just like tap it on the sink or wherever their repository is, their compost pile. And so it bangs up the aluminum and gives it, so that can cause your bad brewing. It's really something a lot of people don't think about, but yeah. So don't bang your aluminum. Once you touch it, you'll see it doesn't feel like a whole lot to it. So, all right, let's see where we are. So, let's see. Parchment, let's see. Air Frying Auntie says, after the live, they're popping pork belly into the air fryer. You know, I just did our big shop at Costco, and I thought about buying a pork belly, and at the last minute I didn't because we have so much food in the house. But I sure wish I had, because that sounds fantastic. However, we've got brisket lined up for the next meat that I'm going to put in the smoker. But I really have enjoyed seeing the pictures of the air fried pork belly, so I'm really interested in trying that. Our air fryer is a really good one. It's the Instapot Omni Plus. So it's it looks like a giant toaster oven, but it has toaster oven, air fryer. It has like 20 buttons and a couple knobs, so it really can do anything. Plus it has the rotisserie. So yeah, you could use a straw cleaner brush. Now, once you, of course, I already reassembled it. The straw cleaner brush, you could use the bottle, the gentle ones. Once you've got it disassembled, that's not a bad thing to stick inside the tube and give that a little scrub in there. But if you rinse your pot right away, you won't need to do that. It won't stay in there. It'll clean right up, no problem, easy peasy. So, yeah, I wish I could remember the name of what the little widget is to pull the gasket out, because it's literally looks like a little stick and it has like a little bend in it, and it just goes boink and think right out instead of all that fooling around that I just had to do. So, let's see. What else? If your pot comes to pressure and then and is brewing, and then suddenly all the pressure drops and it goes back down and stops brewing, it's the same thing. Man, so much relies on this gasket. That's also a replacement of the gasket, or again, not screwing it on right, which, I mean, like just right now, it's not screwing on right. I had to really fiddle with it. Not screwing it on right is really fiddly. So that is, again, you know, everybody, you know, it gets real controversial. The Mocha Pot's hard to use. It's really not, but it is fiddly. Fortunately, if you really like coffee, fiddly becomes a thing that we enjoy. So in the long range of things, really, I don't know why people are getting a fuss about it, because it's all part of the experience. So, time for another bite, right? I can't believe how good it is. I'm going to keep saying that because I'm blown away how soft and fluffy it is, and how non-styrofoamy. Because even the ones that I've made that in the past that were not styrofoamy, I mean, they still dried out pretty fast. So hopefully these are good in the morning too. Let's see, and air fry, and Auntie mentions that they just got the Ninja Foodie Smart Grill and is really enjoying it. Yeah, when I decided to get the air fryer, it was a toss-up for me between the Ninja Foodie and the Omni Plus. And the only reason that I wound up with the Omni Plus is because they had a return at Target and that was still it was a new in box return, so they marked it like 50% off, and at the same time I had like these a couple Target bonus cards, so instead of like the $300, which was ridiculous, and I never would have paid that, I only paid like $100 for it, and it was way too good to pass up. So that's why I have the Omni Plus, but I'm not the least bit sad about it. I also really dig the rotisserie. Like, I love me some rotisserie, and probably, let's see, we've got brisket. I told my family that it might become some weird eats in the not too far future because we have a lot of random stuff in the freezers. And I feel like I don't want to go and buy more food when we have a bunch of food. And so I want us to go and I want us to go through it, which means there's going to be some times where we only have like, sure, 4 adults eating, but we have 2 chicken breasts, 3 pork chops, and a sausage. I mean, I'm not exactly sad by that. We'll just work through it, and whatever happens, happens. So I just feel like we've got a lot of miscellaneous stuff we've been storing away, so it's time to go through it all. Oh, good night, James. It was good to see you on. And Jerry and his jokes, they crack me up every time. The devil went down to Georgia because he was fiddly. Can I tell you, that is one of my favorite songs. I love that song and I don't know if it was because they played it a lot when I was a little kid, but I still love it. And I don't know if it was a meme somewhere or a t-shirt I saw or a joke somewhere. In fact, it might have even been an auntie who posted it, but it super cracked me up because it was like the devil was whispering in someone's ear and said they were weak or something like that, and then they said, and I replied back, yeah, but I'm not the one who lost my golden fiddle to some hillbilly in Georgia. And I just thought, like, oh my God, that was pretty funny because the song was fantastic. But yeah, so let's see. Basic reminders before we end shop for tonight, since it's 7:48. If your Mocha Pot brew is watery and bitter, the water you use too much heat, or you packed it too tight. That's what I was going to tell you about. I keep putting this away, and then I need it again. So, if you pack too tightly in here and you tamp it down and the water can't get through, and we talked about earlier where it might be, some different things, and I said the word channeling. If you pack it too tightly, what happens is the water shoves up through, and either it can't get through at all or eventually it will burst through. But that burst through is not going to be a nice even flow through up through the filters. It's going to poke like a couple little holes, like tunnels, or as is called, a channel. And that is why it comes out weak and bitter, because it just shoots up through that channel, doesn't get to saturate the coffee appropriately, flows up the tube and shoots out, and never gets the full extraction of the coffee. And the extracting that it does do is an over extraction of that one spot, which makes it bitter and burnt. So the key is not to over pack it. Just scoop it in there all nice and loose, and then give it a brush off to level it. Now, the other big complaint that make people think that they don't like the Mocha Pot is that you can get a metallic tasting brew from the aluminum. The reason that happens is because you didn't use a hot enough temperature. I know. All my bitching just now telling you not to turn it up too high. If you start with cold water, or you use the temperature too low, it makes the brew time too long. And then it has time to integrate some of that metallic taste. And then it gets that sour, bittery smell from using too cold of a brew time. And that's also the same reason that you start with the hot water in there. And it may be not as comfortable because you have to hold it with a towel to screw it back together. But you definitely need to start with that, because if you start with the cold water, that's why your brew is going to get that sour taste. Sour and metal taste to it. So, and oh, good evening, older Pennsylvanian. OP asks if a chunkier grind is better to not clog the little holes. And the answer is not necessarily. You'll have to fiddle with it to get the grind you prefer, but you really want not as chunky as pre-ground regular drip coffee from the can, but not as fine as espresso. So you kind of have to get that little in-between line there. So if it's a grinder that has a number on it, you're looking at like 2.5 to 3. But none of my grinders have those numbers on it, so I hate to give them, because I don't know about you guys, but as much as I love coffee, I'm not the person who spent $400 on my coffee grinder. I'm the person who didn't spend enough money on my coffee grinder, so it's not always perfect. And I have to kind of wing it a lot of the times. And then I realize that's taken too long, I have to do something else, that kind of thing. So that's the main crux of it. So I know it's kind of rude. I can't stop eating it. That probably means I can't make them very often. Hopefully other people find the frosting that I made for it and eat them all up, so that they go away faster. However, I do want at least one for the morning, because I'm going to take it to work at the and eat it probably in my truck on the way to the office. Oh, the other thing I will tell you about the Mocha Pot is it is not grind free. You will get silt or grinds in your drink, and that's okay. A lot of good brews have that, and that's okay. Oh, and Air Frying Auntie says they'd like to see a chart with the pictures of the grind sizes. They just have one button grind at will grinder. So yeah, those charts exist. I will pull one up for you, and I will post it in, I think most of us are in the Two Crazy Ketos group, and that's probably going to be the biggest cross section of us all. I've actually never asked Watch Autumn if I can post in the WAC group. I don't know, I feel a little weird about that, but Two Crazy Ketos did let me post in there, so, and I talk to you guys all day long, all the time, so I'll pull up a picture graphic and post it for everybody, and that'll probably be the best way. So, and then one last final takeaway on the Mocha Pot. If after you've done all the things that we've talked about to make yourself a decent cup out of the Mocha Pot, and you still don't like it, and you still think it doesn't taste good, and you still prefer basically any other blend, you just might not like the Mocha Pot. It's definitely not a brew that's for every person. That's okay, because I think that you've noticed by now there are a lot of different ways to do a lot of different coffees to tailor it to you. And so, no worries. And Air Frying Auntie says that she's a 2KK moderator, so she'll allow it. It makes me think of that. See, here I am. I'm speaking in memes all the time. That one meme with the guy on the big sombrero saying I'll allow it is a terrible, terrible thing, but it did make me laugh because, yeah, we'll get that out there. So my two action items that I'm taking away from tonight is to look up the information for the lower acidic options. That would be easier for the urinary tract, and get that info out, and then a graphic with grind size on it so you have a better visual of what the grind sizes mean when I'm talking about them. So those are the two action items, and like I said, I would plan on more information on those getting posted out on Tuesday, because tomorrow I will be out of pocket for a good portion of the day. I do have a video to render and post, so I won't miss like my posting schedule, but it is real short, not real content heavy, so we'll get those things taken care of. Just trying to make sure, and just, I haven't posted next Sunday's live event, but I will get that scheduled. I am going to I think we're going to do something fun, and I really dug that it was really highly artsy visual today with the clear. So I will go ahead and we will do the Belgium balance brew. It's super cool, very steampunk, and actually my balance brewer was a gift from anonymous subscriber, so I don't know who you guys are, but I do thank you very much for being super supportive of my weird habits. And I know my family is super excited that we have more coffee devices in this household. So it will be super cool. I can't wait to share it with you. I have used them before, but usually it's only been at like events where we were specifically steampunk. So it'll be extra awesome. I can't wait. So yes, tomorrow it'll be good. I'm going to be super glad to see my coworkers. I don't see them very often. We actually, for what we used to all sit in one space, have reserved three whole agile spaces so that we can really spread out. It'll be cool. Oh, my goblet full. It's water. So but yeah, the background and the green screen is pretty fun in there. So good night, everyone, and I will talk to you all sometime tomorrow. Jerry, I hope that your cruise is completely awesome, and enjoy your early morning flight. I'm glad it's not monsoon season. So, yep, and I will see everybody. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks. Good night, everybody. Bye-bye.